My friends, I am a man of 95 years. In my long life, I have witnessed bull markets, I have seen crashes, I have seen war, peace, runaway inflation, and devastating recessions. I have learned one fundamental thing: the market does not care about your feelings. It does not care about politics. It cares about only two things: fundamentals and trust. I do not like to talk about Washington. It's not my game. I like businesses, I like numbers, I like honest and able management. But there are moments when what happens in Washington stops being politics. It becomes a systemic risk. It threatens the fundamentals themselves, and it erodes trust. And today, I must break my rule, because something has happened that I think most of the American people, even most of the analysts on Wall Street, have missed. Everyone is talking about August 2025. They talk about the appellate court hearing in New York. They talk about how the $454 million fine against Donald Trump was voided. The media ran with that story. His supporters celebrated, and his opponents were disappointed. But all of them missed the real story. They missed the sleight of hand. You see, while every eye was focused on the $454 million number, something far more dangerous was embedded in that ruling. Yes, the court said the monetary fine was excessive, but they did not reverse the core judgment. They did not say there was no fraud. Instead, they did something I've never seen in my business career. They ratified and expanded a mechanism, monitorship. But this is no ordinary oversight. This isn't an accountant checking the books. No. The court handed the state-appointed monitors powers that have, in effect, stripped Trump of control over his own empire. This is no longer a fine. This is a takeover, a quiet legal takeover, masked by the victorious headline of a dismissed fine. The court, in essence, handed the government the keys to the Trump organization. They said, "You don't have to pay, but we will take the wheel." Think about that. The United States government, through a state court, now has the power to veto transactions, to hire and fire personnel, to liquidate assets of a private business, and not just any business, the business owned by the sitting president of the United States. This entanglement, this conflict of interest, it is not just a red flag. It is a Category 5 hurricane forming just off the coast, and everyone is still sunbathing on the beach. Now, why would the court do this? Why would they take such an extraordinary, almost unprecedented step? The media got so distracted by the dollar amount, they forgot to read the fine print. The reason they did it is simple and it's terrifying: the finding of fraud that was upheld. The judgment that Donald Trump and his organization engaged in a decade-long scheme to inflate property values that stands. Let me put this in terms I understand. When I look to buy a business, I look for a durable competitive advantage, and I look for management I can trust. I have said for 50 years that I would rather have a wonderful business at a fair price than a fair business at a wonderful price. But the one thing I will not do is go into business with people I don't trust. If I find out a CEO has been cooking the books, if I find out they've been lying to their bankers, I don't walk away, I run. What the New York court system has said in no uncertain terms is that the man running the United States of America cannot be trusted not to commit fraud. Again, think about the signal that sends. This isn't a political opponent slinging mud. This is a finding of fact by a court of law upheld on appeal. The court has effectively placed the president's personal business into a legal conservatorship. They have created a firewall, not to protect the president from his business, but to protect the public from the president's business practices. This is uncharted territory. And this is where the real trouble begins. This is where the political chaos starts to bleed into the economic fundamentals. You see, this August 2025 ruling creates a structural instability that we have never had to price in before. It creates a level of profound fundamental uncertainty. And as I've told you, markets can handle bad news. They can't handle uncertainty. What are the rules now? If the president, in his official capacity, makes a decision on trade policy that benefits one of his properties, who can stop it? If he negotiates with a foreign leader and that foreign leader offers a good deal on a new hotel development, is that a personal deal or a state deal? We always had to worry about the appearance of a conflict of interest. Now we are dealing with a legally declared fact of fraudulent behavior at the center of government. The court-appointed monitors are watching his business, but who is watching the country? And this is where the fragility I mentioned, the fragility beneath all the bluster, truly begins to show. This New York judgment isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening at the same time that the president is facing a cascade of existential legal battles in other jurisdictions, battles that aren't just about money or business control, but about his personal freedom. People need to understand what this costs, not just in dollars, but in bandwidth, in focus. Campaign finance reports have revealed something that, as an investor, I find stunning. Trump's legal defense committees have burned through more than $100 million in attorney fees since 2023. $100 million. Now, when I see a company spending $100 million on legal defense, I ask myself, what else could that capital have been used for? Product development? Paying down debt? Returning value to shareholders? In this case, that's $100 million that could have gone to campaign operations, to policy development, to get out the vote efforts. Instead, it's being fed into a black hole of legal fees. And let me tell you about legal defense spending. You can't predict when it will end. Every motion, every appeal, every day in court, it just consumes capital. Partner-level attorneys at major firms can charge $1,500, $2,000 an hour. Multiply that across multiple cases, and you see how you get to $100 million. But it's not the money that worries me most, it's the focus. When you are fighting a legal battle on this many fronts, that is what you are thinking about. That is what consumes your attention, not inflation, not foreign trade, not the stability of the bond market. And this brings us to Georgia. If you thought the New York fraud case was serious, what is happening in Georgia is on another level entirely. This is criminal, genuinely criminal charges that could send a former and current president to prison. I do not say that lightly. Trump faces charges under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO. Now, RICO was designed to go after organized crime, the mafia. It's a tool to dismantle criminal enterprises. And now it's being used against a sitting president and 18 co-defendants alleging a conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election results if convicted. If Trump could face up to 20 years in prison, 20 years for a man in his late 72nd, that is a life sentence. This is what is occupying his mind. This is the ultimate distraction. And that kind of distraction at the top creates a vacuum that markets and our adversaries will always exploit. And this is where the real-world cost of this chaos begins to surface. It's not just about the president's personal legal troubles anymore. It's about how those troubles and his confrontational style are now causing a kind of institutional paralysis. What we are seeing now, something I haven't witnessed in my 95 years to this degree, is a wholesale institutional resistance. I'm talking about the courts, the federal agencies, even state governments. They are all, in their own way, pushing back against this administration. Let me give you some specifics because the details matter. Just this month, November 2025, a federal judge in Oregon, blocked the president's order to deploy National Guard troops to Portland for riot control. The judge didn't just disagree with the policy, he ruled it unconstitutional. Think about that. The commander-in-chief issues an order and a federal court says, no, you cannot do that. It violates the Constitution. This isn't an isolated incident. Across the country, Courts have halted or delayed dozens of executive directives on everything from immigration to energy policy. In fact, a watchdog organization, Just Security, is tracking this. They report that the administration is currently involved in over 500 active legal challenges to its own policies. 500. That is not a typo. Of those, roughly 30 executive orders have been fully blocked, completely stopped, and more than 250 are just stuck in legal limbo, awaiting a final ruling. Now, from a business perspective, imagine you were trying to run a company, any company, Berkshire Hathaway, for example. What if 500 of my decisions as CEO were being challenged in court? What if 30 of them were completely blocked by judges and another 250 were just hanging there, creating uncertainty? How could I run the company? How could I make plans? How could I execute a long-term strategy? The answer is you couldn't, not effectively. It would be total chaos. And that is exactly what is happening to the business of our government right now. This level of judicial confrontation, analysts are saying